This is a tremendous find. I mean, this Mike Zullo and Sheriff Arpaio have had project database records they got from a whistleblower. They've been proving them out. They've had them since 2013. Now, it was really over the past week when I started talking with Mike Zullo, and we realized that Donald Trump was in this database. He searched it for it, and we're posting it on InfoWars right now. Donald Trump has been wiretaps, electronic surveillance, all over the place. Certainly Trump Tower, but also Mar-a-Lago, various companies that he's owned, golf courses, since 2004. Continuing into 2009 when Obama came into office, and we have no reason to believe it quit. Now, you can't read them, but they come out as these huge pages of logs and logs and logs that show the names and the businesses, the addresses, the phone numbers that were harvested.
And to protect the innocent, we're only releasing very limited amounts.
Right, we're really going to try to be very careful in what we're going to release on this because we're not printing the actual documents. But there's probably 1 million records, 1 million people's under electronic surveillance in this one database that was handed over to law enforcement and Sheriff Arpaio's office. And what it shows is that everybody associated with Trump, in other words, once the NSA picked up Trump, anyone Trump called was then picked up as well. So you've got a whole list of his employees here, and we're listing the employees. I think we'll want to make sure we don't include the phone numbers that was in some of the original records, but I've redacted everything. Phone numbers aren't there, so you could, but call them. But project managers in the Trump organization, people running his golf courses.
And by the way, you called me last week with the sources and said, yeah, is this your cell? Yeah, that's my old cell. Yeah, this is your private office. People always come to the warehouse, and then yeah, there it is. I've moved out of that other office too. This is wild. So again, let's talk about the sourcing of this. This is big. I mean, this is huge. This is proving that and this is just the database we had a hold of that Obama, when he was in office, was involved in the surveillance of President Trump before he was president.
Yes, and also through the time he was president, Obama was continuing the wiretapping in this Operation Dragnet, and I think he continued it through his entire administration. The point of all this is that, this is, again, documentation that Trump was under electronic surveillance in a much more massive way than I think Trump even realizes. I mean, all of his Trump palace was, they were actually, these records show that Ivana Trump was under surveillance. Fred Trump, which seems to me to be the father, under surveillance. They have employees of Trump. So it's a massive dragnet of pulling in. And it was not only the phone messages, but then they did electronic surveillance of all the financial records. They went and got bank records, they got credit card transaction records, tax records, and it was all compiled into massive databases on Trump going back to 2004, and I think continuing until today.
By the way, it's incontrovertible. That's what I'm having added to the article that the New York Times said in 4 different articles in January that they were surveilling Trump, that they had the wiretaps, the NSA intercepts. And so we have all these other admissions of the Senate being spied on, you name it. So the claim that Trump's discredited and that none of this happened and that agencies say it didn't happen, well, I mean, we famously have Clapper in front of the Congressional Committee saying that the NSA spies on no one in the U.S. when it's completely admitted they are.
I mean, as I say, we're not going to release the list, but these go on. There's 1 million names on these lists. And what these lists show is the name of the person, the file number, the business, the address.
And the file's key. This is a database of who you want to go in and then hear the files. So this is a database to index, like a library. Go in and then you want to hear them, track their whole history. There it is.
And the phone numbers, now all the phone numbers, and law enforcement, Mike Zullo and Sheriff Arpaio has been checking this out for a long time. The phone numbers all check. You saw your own record in this database, Alex, and proved out that was all authentic information.
Oh, it's got a phone number nobody even knew, and it's got an address I use to secretly broadcast out of. We'll be back. I'm going to come right back to you. All right. Due to some of those things going on with security issues, this is a big deal. We started publishing this today. There's more reports coming out in the next week. I've been talking to Dr. Corsi about what he thinks is best. We have done boil downs of what's in these documents and posted them. I think we should black out with just a marker the contact info for people and go ahead so everybody can see. And I think you can just use a computer program, obviously, or my crew can do it, Dr. Corsi, now that you're part of InfoWars. If you want us to just black out in a whole column the phone numbers, I think we should do like WikiLeaks does. They release it all. I think we should release with the contact info redacted, everybody's name, so folks know they were being spied on, because, again, this comes from law enforcement sources. Now, we know the DEA, state police, these threat fusion centers have access to this dragnet. We know that this is going on. It's been in the news. We know that Cheryl Atkinson of CBS on Fast and Furious got surveilled by Obama. She confirmed that. So the claim this isn't going on is like saying the sun didn't come up this morning, but they'll either ignore this giant bombshell story or say it's made up. So we've got the detective coming on to talk about this in the next segment. You'll ride shotgun with us. But, I mean, I always err on the side of safety and privacy. But at the same time, maybe if the media challenges this and says it isn't real, then you can't trust MSM, though. You send them the database, they'll put it out. We've run into this before. I don't know what to do, because obviously they're going to say this isn't real. Just like, when we said Obamacare had death panels or got rid of your doctor or doubled prices, and Gruber said, thank God they're dumb, we just denied it. I mean, we know this is real. We know this is happening. I mean, this is a big deal, though. This is one of the biggest stories in the last year, that they've made this big deal saying Trump's wrong, nobody surveilled him, when they're in the news months ago saying they were surveilling him. But there's nothing in the surveillance, so now they've backed off of it. The intelligence House head, Nunes, says there's nothing there. He was surveilled, but there's nothing there. It's just crazy that they would try to deny, in this age of Snowden, that surveillance is going on, and then he's the president. He knows he was. If we're getting these documentation, imagine what he's getting. I guess that's why he's so confident, because he said in the next week or so, a few days ago, this would come out. I wonder how it's coming out here, Dr. Corsi.
Alex, I'll tell you exactly how it's coming out. On Tuesday last week, when I had the information, I shared it with the White House. President Trump has known about this database and that we were going to break the story since Tuesday. By
the way, let me stop you. I didn't know if you were ready to release that now. Of course, I knew that. And I don't want to say who you're in contact with, but because they'll try to purge him. But, I mean, we're in contact with a lot of folks at the top. Take your time here, Dr. Corsi, even in the next segment. Let's walk through here the fact that they'll say, oh, they got it from InfoWars. No, we got it from law enforcement, just like WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks has this too now. So just explain what's happening.
Well, we got it from law enforcement. That's the Project Dragnet database, the listing of names, phone numbers, telephone numbers, electronic surveillance since 2004 through 2010. I made sure the White House had the raw data on Donald Trump last Tuesday. We also shared it with some key members of Congress, one or two select members of Congress, and we're wanting to go and present this to the Department of Justice. Now, we're going to have one more story. I'll be writing it up tomorrow, and we can prove the extent to which Sheriff Arpaio was wiretapped, electronic surveillance, interference with his court case, and we're going to start to share that information as well with the White House.
And again, I love Arpaio. Whether you love him or hate him, it's illegal. Obama openly sued him. The UN came after him. They went after him. George Soros spent, 30-something million against him, publicly we know of. So if they can do this to him, anybody can do it. This is a lynching of a great sheriff and a patriot and a friend of Donald Trump. So the great news is good law enforcement is not going to sit here while they lie about Arpaio or President Trump.
And Mike Zulu and Sheriff Arpaio are willing to come into Washington next week to brief members of the White House, members of Congress, Department of Justice. All they have to do at this point is ask the NSA to release the Project Dragnet database, the millions of names of people who have been under electronic surveillance.
And the president can review that if he wants privately. He should order them, give me the database. And he's already gotten it from you, but...
Well, they've gotten the ones pertaining to the records of Donald Trump. Donald Trump's narrative, I think, changed last week when they realized that there were records showing he'd been wiretapped, electronic surveillance, in Trump Tower. But we've got in here...
By the way, I've got to stop you. I'm going to give you the floor when we come back. But Dr. Corsi, you're a very humble man. I mean, you're the number won New York Times bestseller 3 times because of your intel connections. Folks, they call us fake news because we're so real. This is one of the biggest stories ever. Is this not one of the biggest stories of your career as a patriot? I mean, this is so big, I can't believe it. And of course, I knew this earlier in the week. I've had to just sit back and let you work, being very excited, obviously, about it. But seeing the president then respond, he checked with databases, they know. This is earth-shaking that they've bet everything against us, saying they didn't surveil him, when they bragged they surveilled him 2 months ago, and now we have the documents.
Well, and Alex, that's why I wanted to show you your record, because you could verify the cell phone or the phone number, the address, which no one knows you had. It's an older address.
And my old cell phone that nobody but family had, yeah.
And he's going to recognize his cell phone numbers. He's going to recognize his father's phone numbers, his wife's phone numbers. His employees are going to recognize his employees' phone numbers.
Trump has called me from these numbers.
Yes, he called you. I mean, I showed some of these numbers in Washington. People recognize them immediately. As Trump's cell phone is in here.
Trump's secretary?
Secretary's in here. And every organization he owned. In fact, NSA was even wiretapping the summer house that Trump would stay in. They were wiretapping his golf courses and the people who ran the golf courses.
They even at Mar-a-Lago know when he sold it, he kept a couple of apartments. They know how to target even those very rooms.
Mar-a-Lago's on these lists. He was Donald Trump was being under electronic surveillance in all through New York.
And that's why he's so pissed. And that's why they've bet everything on saying he's a liar.
And his Chicago operations, anywhere that they had Trump International, those were also being wiretapped. All of his offices over by the United Nations, they were being wiretapped. Operations that they had down on Wall Street were being wiretapped. And then Chicago, Florida, anywhere Trump showed up. And what really kind of shocked me was Ivana Trump, House of Ivana, with the address and the phone numbers show up on the list as under electronic surveillance starting in 2004. Now, I mean, again, this is Project Dragnet.
And that's because he came out against the war. This is bipartisan attacks, but it accelerates under Obama. So the big news is here. We've got him in documents surveilled in the Obama era, showing the whole media is discredited.
And also, I mean, he also had already run for president. I mean, he's trying to run for president going back into the 90s. Roger Stone documents that in his book, The Making of the President, 2014. Donald Trump's been a public figure since the 1990s.
That's right. I want to be clear for everybody's safety. The addresses they've published, I am no longer at. But they did publish one of my secret locations. All right, I want to get my